The night has a language of its own. It whispers through the trees, it lingers in the silence of empty roads, and sometimes it carries the scent of flowers that should not be there. The sweet perfume of frangipani. If you ever notice it, especially when the air is still and no blossoms are near, you should be afraid. For that is the calling card of the Pontianak. In the folklore of Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, the Pontianak is not just a ghost story. It is a warning. She is the restless spirit of a woman who died while carrying life inside her. A woman denied peace, her body buried, but her soul torn apart by rage and sorrow. They say she is beautiful at first glance. Her long black hair flowing freely, her pale skin glowing in the moonlight, and her red eyes shimmering with a strange allure. Men are drawn to her, enchanted by her presence. But the truth is revealed only when it is too late. Her mouth opening wide, lined with sharp fangs, her nails long and yellow like claws, ready to rip flesh apart. The Pontianak is not bound to one place. She roams forests, lonely roads, and villages, always hunting. Sometimes she appears as a woman in distress, sometimes as laughter hidden in the trees, sometimes as weeping in the distance. And if you hear her cry, the softer it sounds, the closer she is. Parents warn their children not to wander at night. Old men clutch their amulets of iron and whisper prayers when the dogs start howling. Some even drive nails into banana trees, believing it will trap her spirit if she hides within. But no matter the protection, no matter the ritual, there are always stories. Encounters whispered from one generation to the next. Stories of men walking home late at night and never making it back. Stories of women hearing cries outside their window, only to find scratches on their door the next morning. Tonight, you will hear some of these stories, each one different but tied by the same terror. The scent of flowers, the sound of laughter, the presence of something that should not be. So listen closely, but not too closely. And if, while you listen, you notice a sudden sweetness in the air, like blossoms carried on the wind, remember this: the Pontianak doesn't just belong to the past. She listens, she hunts, she waits, and sometimes she finds you not in the forest, not on the road, not in the stories, but right where you sit. This is the legend of the Pontianak. She was not always a monster. Before the crying in the forest, before the scent of frangipani haunted the night, she was simply a woman. Her name has been forgotten, swallowed by the passing of centuries. But her sorrow remains. She was born in a small kampung surrounded by rice fields and forest. Life was hard, but she was known for her beauty, long black hair, gentle eyes, and a laugh that carried across the fields. When she grew older, she fell in love. He was a traveler, a man from another village, handsome and full of promises. He swore he would love her forever. She believed him, but forever, it seems, was a short season. When her belly began to swell with his child, his footsteps grew distant. Nights passed without him returning. Days passed without a word. And then one evening, he left and never came back. She was abandoned, alone, left to carry both a child and the weight of shame. The villagers whispered. They mocked her for being left behind, cursed her for bringing dishonor. Yet she endured. She whispered to her unborn child, promising that love would be enough, that together they would survive. But when the hour of birth came, love was not enough. The pain tore through her body like fire. She screamed until her throat was raw, until her fingernails dug into the wooden floor. The midwives tried, but there was too much blood, too much loss. The baby never cried, and she never opened her eyes again. Her death should have been an ending. Instead, it was a beginning. That night, the villagers heard it, the cry of a woman carried on the wind, the scent of frangipani thick in the air. Men claimed to see a figure moving between the banana trees, her long hair flowing, her dress white as bone. At first, she looked beautiful, but beauty was only a mask. Her face would split into a monstrous grin, her nails sharpen into claws, her eyes burn red with hunger. And when she attacked, her victims were left pale and drained, their last breath stolen in silence. They gave her a name, Pontianak, the restless spirit of a woman who died in childbirth. A mother torn from her child, cursed to wander between life and death. Some say she seeks revenge on men, punishing them for the betrayal that ended her life. Others say she hunts indiscriminately, driven by an endless grief no soul could endure. But all agree on this. When the scent of flowers drifts through the night, when the crying calls from the forest, when the laughter echoes just outside your window, she is near. Once she was a woman. Now she is death. She is Pontianak. The night was darker than usual when Adi's motorbike sputtered and died. He cursed under his breath, kicking the stand and glaring at the lifeless machine. The road was quiet, a thin stretch of asphalt cutting through thick trees on both sides. His village was still 3 miles away, and the nearest house he had passed was at least 20 minutes back. He pulled out his phone, but the screen was black, dead battery. Of course. So he started walking. The trees leaned over the road, their shadows stretching long and jagged under the moonlight. The only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath his sandals. Every few minutes, a chill breeze rustled the leaves, but otherwise, the forest was silent. That silence began to press on him. It was too still, too unnatural. And then it came. A scent. Soft, sweet, almost comforting at first. Flowers. Frangipani. Adi frowned. There were no flower bushes along this road. He had walked it many times before. It was nothing but trees and the occasional banana plant. Yet now the air seemed filled with that fragrance, as though a garden had suddenly bloomed around him. He tried to ignore it. He kept walking, eyes fixed on the narrow ribbon of road that glowed faintly in the moonlight. But then he heard it, faint, almost like an echo. Crying, the soft weeping of a woman. Adi froze. His grandmother's words came back to him. If you hear a woman crying at night, do not answer. Do not look for her. Keep your head down and keep moving. He muttered a prayer under his breath and forced his legs forward. But the crying grew louder, circling him, as though the trees themselves were mourning. The words slipped out before he could stop himself. His voice cracked in the still air, and the crying stopped. The silence was worse than the sound. His heart pounded in his chest as sweat prickled his skin. He wanted to run, but his legs felt heavy, as if the night itself was pressing down on him. Then he saw her. At first, she was just a shape, standing beneath a tree about 20 meters ahead. A woman in white, her long hair falling down her back. She seemed fragile, delicate, her head tilted slightly as though she were crying into her hands. Adi's fear wrestled with his instinct to help. Maybe she was lost, maybe she had been in an accident. His feet carried him closer, almost against his will. Are you all right? He asked, his voice trembling. The woman didn't move. He stepped closer. The air was thick with the perfume of flowers now, suffocatingly sweet. His eyes watered from it. Do you need help? Slowly, the woman turned. Her face was pale, too pale, like paper under moonlight. Her lips stretched into a smile, but it was wrong. Too wide, too sharp. And her eyes, they glowed red, catching the faint light of the moon like embers in the dark. Adi's breath caught in his throat. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't. His body was frozen, his legs useless. The woman tilted her head, her hair spilling like a curtain across her shoulder. Then she laughed, not softly, not like the giggle of a woman, but a shriek that pierced the night, high-pitched and jagged, echoing through the trees like broken glass. Adi clamped his hands over his ears, but it was inside his head, rattling his bones. His knees buckled. The laughter stopped suddenly, and in that silence, he heard something else, a fluttering sound, wings. He looked up just as the figure was gone from the road. For one awful second, there was nothing. Then, behind him, he turned too slowly. She was there, right at his back, her face inches from his. Her mouth open wide, splitting her pale face into something monstrous. Rows of fangs glistened in the moonlight, her breath reeking of rot beneath the sweetness of flowers. Her nails were long and yellow, curling like talons. Adi screamed, stumbling backward. He turned and ran, his legs finally moving, pounding the asphalt as fast as they could carry him. He didn't dare look behind. He didn't need to. The screeching laughter followed him, always close, as if she floated just above the ground, chasing, waiting. His chest burned, his vision blurred. He could see the faint outline of the village lights ahead, just beyond the bend. If he could reach them, maybe he would be safe. But the laughter cut off again. The silence was worse than the sound. He risked one glance over his shoulder. Nothing. He slowed, gasping, the lights of the village drawing nearer. His heart thundered as he staggered forward. He almost laughed with relief. And then he smelled it again, stronger than before. Flowers. Frangipani. He stopped. The scent surrounded him, drowning him, filling his lungs until he could hardly breathe. His vision swam, and he dropped to his knees. The last thing Adi saw was her shadow, stretching long across the road, her figure descending silently from the branches above. And then, nothing. Some say his body was found days later, pale as bone, his chest torn open as though claws had reached inside. Others say he was never found at all. Only his broken motorbike remained by the side of the road, the scent of flowers lingering long after. The story of Adi is not unique. In villages across Southeast Asia, tales like his are whispered in hushed voices, especially on nights when the dogs bark without reason or the wind carries the perfume of unseen flowers. Encounters with the Pontianak are never spoken of lightly, because to speak of her too often is to invite her attention. But how do you protect yourself from something that is already dead? Something that wears the face of beauty, only to reveal the mouth of a monster? The old ones say there are signs you must never ignore. If you hear a woman crying in the distance, do not search for her. Do not call out, because the Pontianak is a hunter of sound and attention. The moment you acknowledge her, she will turn her gaze upon you. If the crying seems close, it may be safer than you think, because when she sounds far away, that is when she is nearest, whispering her sorrow right at your ear. Dogs, too, can sense her. If they howl toward the darkness, she is far. But if they whimper and cower, if their tails press tight between their legs and their bodies shiver, then she is already near. Villagers keep charms of iron close at night, for iron is said to wound the spirit world. Knives placed under pillows or scissors hung above doorways are common protections. Some carry small mirrors, believing that if the Pontianak sees her reflection, she will recoil at the reminder of her own monstrous form. And there are darker methods. Old rituals tell of driving a nail into the base of a banana tree. The Pontianak, it is said, hides within the trees when she is not hunting. Pinning the bark with a nail can trap her spirit inside, caging her rage in wood and sap. But beware, if that nail is ever pulled free, she will return with a vengeance. Yet protections are never certain, because the Pontianak is not just a spirit of death. She is a symbol of betrayal, abandonment, and sorrow. The road through the palm oil plantation was the kind of road nobody wanted to drive at night. It was long, narrow, and lined with towering trees that seemed to bend inward, closing off the sky. By day it was hot, the air thick with the smell of earth and oil. By night, it was something else entirely, a corridor of shadows, empty and endless. But for four friends returning from a late wedding celebration, it was the only way home. Hafiz was behind the wheel, his old Proton Saga rattling as it bounced over potholes. In the passenger seat sat Nadia, humming softly to herself, scrolling her phone for signal that never came. In the back were Farid and Lena, half asleep, leaning against each other as the car pushed deeper into the night. The laughter and music of the wedding still lingered in their minds, but the deeper they drove into the plantation road, the quieter the car became. Even Nadia stopped humming, her eyes darting toward the trees that rushed past in the beam of the headlights. It was Fard who spoke first. "Why does it smell like flowers?" The others sniffed the air. He was right. A faint sweetness hung inside the car, drifting in through the vents. "Probably from the trees," Hafiz muttered, his voice tight. "There are no flowers here," Lena whispered. Her grandmother had told her enough stories to know better. The car rolled on. The air grew thicker with the scent, almost choking, and then Nadia saw it. At the edge of the road, just beyond the reach of the headlights, stood a woman. She was dressed in white, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. She wasn't moving, just standing, her head lowered as if she were crying. "Stop the car," Nadia shouted. Hafiz slammed the brakes, the tires squealing on the asphalt. The car lurched to a stop, and all four of them stared into the darkness. The woman was still there, a pale figure half hidden by the trees. "She needs help," Nadia said, fumbling with her seatbelt. But Lena grabbed her arm. Don't you know what that is?" Her voice was sharp, trembling. "That's not a woman." Fard swallowed hard, leaning forward between the seats. His skin prickled, the hairs on his arms standing on end. The scent of flowers was overwhelming now. Hafiz gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He wanted to drive on, but his eyes were locked on the figure. Something about the way she stood, it wasn't right. Too still, too patient. Then the woman lifted her head. Her face glowed pale in the headlights, her lips curling into a smile that was too wide. Her eyes gleamed red, catching the beam like blood in water. The friends gasped. Nadia clamped her hand over her mouth. Lena was already whispering prayers, rocking back and forth in her seat. And then she vanished. One moment she was standing there. The next, the roadside was empty. "Drive!" Fard screamed. "Go, go, go!" Hafiz slammed the accelerator, the car roaring forward. But even as the road sped beneath them, a sound rose in the air. Laughter, high-pitched, piercing, circling them. It wasn't outside. It was inside. The car itself seemed to echo with it, vibrating in their bones. Lena screamed, covering her ears. Nadia pressed herself against the window, eyes squeezed shut. Hafiz tried to focus, his hands shaking as he gripped the wheel. Then the headlights flickered, once, twice, and went out. Darkness swallowed them. The engine still roared, but the road vanished. They were a moving coffin, blind and trapped. "Please, no," Hafiz whispered, pounding the dashboard. The laughter grew louder. And then, a shape in the back seat. Farid turned his head, and his scream tore through the car. Between him and Lena sat the woman. Her hair draped forward, her face half hidden, but her smile gleamed through the strands. Her claws rested lightly on Lena's shoulder, her nails pressing just enough to draw a bead of blood. Lena froze, her breath catching. She didn't dare move. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Fard scrambled, clawing at the door, but it wouldn't open. The locks were jammed. He pounded his fists against the glass, shouting for help that would never come. The woman leaned closer to Lena, her breath hot against her ear. "Did you smell the flowers?" she whispered, her voice like silk torn on broken glass. Lena sobbed, shaking her head, whispering prayers as fast as her lips could form them. Then the woman laughed again, and in a blink, she was gone. The headlights flickered back on. The car was empty. The friends drove the rest of the way in silence, no one daring to speak, no one daring to breathe too loud. When they finally reached the village, Hafiz stopped the car, and all four stumbled out, collapsing onto the dirt, shaking and pale. But Lena never forgot the feeling of those claws on her shoulder. For weeks afterward, she found scratches across her skin each morning, as though invisible fingers had marked her at night. And sometimes, when she lay awake, the scent of flowers would drift through her window, sweet and suffocating. The Pontianak had not finished with her. The Pontianak is not always seen as a random spirit. In many villages, she is remembered not only as a ghost of sorrow, but as a judge of men. They say she hunts those who were unfaithful, who betrayed women, who left promises broken. For some, she is vengeance made flesh, a punishment for cruelty hidden in the shadows of the night. A man who strays from his wife, a man who takes advantage of innocence, a man who speaks sweet words but leaves only suffering, such men, it is whispered, will meet her first. But vengeance is not the only story. In other tales, she hunts without discrimination, not because of who you are, but because of what you represent, life, breath, the thing she was denied. Death in childbirth is not just an ending. It is a ripping away a half-life, a wound that never closes. She died carrying life, but never saw it born. And so, she steals from the living to fill the emptiness inside her. This duality is what makes her terrifying. Sometimes she is punishment. Sometimes she is hunger. Always she is sorrow. And so, when travelers tell of meeting a woman in white by the roadside, no one asks what kind of man he was. It doesn't matter. Once you smell the flowers, once you hear the laughter, your fate is sealed. The Pontianak does not forgive. She does not forget, and she never leaves empty-handed. Arif and City had just moved into their new home. It was a small wooden house on stilts, sitting at the edge of the forest. The rent was cheap, almost suspiciously so, but for a young couple expecting their first child, it seemed like a blessing. At first, the nights were peaceful. The forest sang with crickets, frogs, and the occasional call of an owl. City would sit on the veranda in the evenings, rubbing her swollen belly, smiling as the night breeze cooled her skin. But soon, small things began to unsettle her. The dogs in the nearby village barked every night at the same hour, around midnight, always in the direction of the forest. At first, she ignored it, but when the barking turned to whimpering, when the dog began to howl, as if something unseen stalked the trees, her unease grew. Then came the scent. Sweet, heavy, frangipani. It drifted into the house, even with the windows shut. Arif would wave it off, insisting it was just the forest blooming at night. But City knew better. She had grown up with the stories. One night, she woke to a sound. Crying. Soft, distant, like a woman weeping in the dark. She shook Arif awake, but by the time he sat up, the sound was gone. You're imagining it, he told her, pulling her close. It's just the wind. But the next night, it returned. Louder. Closer. This time, Arif heard it too. He stood, grabbing the parang he kept by the bed. Stay inside. He whispered, moving toward the window. Through the glass, the forest was a wall of blackness. The crying was clearer now. A woman sobbing just beyond the first line of trees. Arif's skin prickled. He wanted to step outside, to chase the sound away, but his grandmother's warnings filled his mind. Never answer. Never go looking. He stayed by the window until the crying stopped. Then he lay awake until dawn, clutching the parang. For a few nights, nothing happened. They tried to convince themselves it was over. But on the night their baby was born, the scent of flowers returned stronger than ever. City lay in bed, exhausted but glowing, cradling the tiny infant in her arms. Arif sat nearby, watching over them. But then he saw it. Shadows moving outside the window, long hair brushing against the glass as if something passed by, circling the house. The dogs howled again, this time in pure terror. The baby stirred, crying softly. And beneath that sound came another. Laughter. High-pitched. Piercing. It sliced through the walls as if there were no barriers at all. Arif leapt to his feet, clutching his parang. He shouted prayers, his voice shaking. City screamed as the baby's cries grew louder. The window rattled violently. Then the laughter stopped. Silence. Arif's breath came in ragged gasps. His knuckles whitened around the blade. Slowly, he turned toward the bed to reassure City, and froze. At the foot of the bed stood a woman, dressed in white. Her long black hair hung down, her pale skin glowing in the dim lamplight. She was smiling, her red eyes fixed on the child. City screamed, clutching the baby tight against her chest. Arif raised the parang, his arm trembling. "Stay back," he shouted. The woman tilted her head. Her smile widened, revealing rows of sharp teeth. She stepped closer, her nails dragging along the wooden bedpost, leaving long gouges in the wood. Arif swung the blade, but it passed through empty air. She was gone. Then, behind him, he turned too late. She was there, inches from his face, her breath hot and sickly sweet. Her eyes bored into his, and for a moment he couldn't move. Then City screamed again. The woman was beside her now, leaning over the baby. Her claws hovered just above the child's fragile skin. "No!" Arif roared, lunging forward. He swung the parang with all his strength. This time, the blade connected, not with flesh, but with something that shrieked as though the forest itself were tearing apart. The woman vanished. The house fell silent, except for the baby's cries. Arif collapsed to his knees, clutching the parang, his chest heaving. City sobbed quietly, rocking the child, her eyes darting around the room as if expecting the woman to return. But she didn't. At dawn, the scent of flowers still lingered, heavy and choking. And on the wooden bedpost, the scratches remained carved deep into the wood. Some say Arif and City left the house soon after, never to return. Others say they stayed, but the baby grew up haunted, crying at night as though someone unseen stood by the cradle. And sometimes, neighbors claimed, they would see a woman in white at the edge of the forest, watching the house with red, gleaming eyes. You have heard the stories. A man walking home alone, friends driving through the night, a couple guarding their newborn child. Different places, different lives, yet each bound by the same signs. The perfume of flowers, the sound of weeping, the laughter that splits the night. The Pontianak is not confined to one road, one village, or one forest. She moves with the shadows, slipping between stories and generations. Her hunger never ends, her sorrow never fades. Some say she hunts the guilty, others say she hunts the living without reason. In the end, does it matter? The result is always the same. There are protections. Iron mirrors whispered prayers. But protections are only comfort for the living. Against something born of rage and grief, there is no true defense. At best, you could delay her. At worst, you invite her closer. So the old advice remains the same. Do not answer when you hear crying at night. Do not stop for the woman in white. Do not trust the scent of flowers where no flowers grow. Because if you do, she will come. And perhaps, as you listen to these stories now, you've already noticed it. The faint sweetness in the air. The soft sound just beyond the edge of hearing. If you have, don't look. Don't move. Don't breathe too loud. Because the Pontianak doesn't just belong to the forests and lonely roads. She is here, in the spaces between words, in the silence after the story ends. And once she finds you, she never leaves.